Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. I realize it's, 4 p.m., not necessarily the topic that people want to hear about because it might sound a little depressing, but I swear it will remain informative mostly and hopefully empowering. This is the goal of today's presentation. I see there's a question asking for my last name. My last name is Bénédicte Schoepflin, Schoepflin, but you will see that on the screen very soon. So I'm going to share a PowerPoint that I prepared so that you can follow along with me. Just let me make sure that I go full screen so you can all view things well. Please hold. I always get a little nervous when I'm doing public speaking. So
it's okay, Bénédicte, we all do. Don't worry.
So that should work. Please let me know if you don't see things, but you should be able to see the I want you to have the full screen. Okay, like this. Perfect. So I will move swiftly through my introduction slides since Anna has already taken care of it. And I will introduce the CNPA a little bit more. So CNPA stands for Canadian Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse. We're a pan-Canadian network. So we have members that are both individuals and organizations that work in fields that usually have to do with health, abuse prevention, services to older adults. There's some researchers, there's a wide variety of sectors represented, and they all have in common one thing, is that they want to improve the way we understand, prevent, and respond to the mistreatment of older people. So the big vision is a society where older adults are valued and respected and can live free from abuse. So in terms of how it materializes in our objectives and our goals and our work, is first is to help people rethink and reshape how we think of aging and how we incorporate it, or in the case of today, don't or incorporate it sometimes in our policies, in our practices, in our communities. It's to secondly to empower people, older people, to protect themselves and to protect each other through practical evidence-based resources. There's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of very smart people doing great things, but it's a matter of bringing it all together and sharing it with people and making it available. And the goal is really to try to have a holistic approach to prevention, support, and intervention. So we do it 3 ways. One, we connect people and organizations. So that means across jurisdictions, across the country, across sectors, try to foster more collaboration and coordinated effort on work so that, like Anna was saying earlier, we don't end up with people working each in a corner on the same things when really they could be joining forces and having a bigger impact and affecting positively more people. 2, we inform and we educate. So we have a website, CNPEA.ca, which is really a sort of repository of information. So it includes research, tools, infographics, lots of documents and resources that exist around matters that are related to elder abuse prevention, neglect prevention, ageism prevention, which is a big part of the conversation. We also host a series of program of webinars, just like yours, that tackles a lot of these topics. We organize online events for big key dates like World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which is June 15, and Seniors Day, which is October 1st. Throughout the year, we do a lot of these. And 3, we advance program and policy development on matters that are related to the topic of ageism, elder abuse prevention, and neglect. So that means, consulting with sometimes the government when they will hear us and a lot of stakeholders to kind of push forward together so that we can improve the current situation. So part of my job is to talk about the issues that affect older Canadians. And one of the big ones is online scams and frauds. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm showing you on the screen kind of what we're going to cover. So we're going to explore the types of cyber frauds and scams, the key tactics that fraudsters use, a few safety tips, what to do, who to report, And I added also one slide about how to talk about it with other people, because that can be an important factor in whether somebody comes forward or not, or reports or not. So it's a lot of information. I don't expect you to retain everything. I'm hoping that you can have access to the slides afterwards. I'm happy to see them shared freely. There's a lot of links in there that you can use if you want to explore this more in depth. So before we get into the scams, I just want to make a tiny distinction. So there's financial abuse and frauds and scams really are both kinds of harms that affect people, their well-being, and their finances. There are slightly differences in some ways, so I thought I would talk about that. So financial abuse is when somebody tricks, threatens, coerces, or persuades you one way or another out of your money, your property, or your possession. It's probably the most understood and the most reported kind of abuse. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's the one that happens the most, but it's the one that people come forward about the most. The other kinds being, of course, physical, emotional, sexual, systemic, and neglect. So what makes what contributes to the definition of financial abuse is that usually there's an expectation of trust, and there's a relationship of an imbalance of power between the person who inflicts the harm and the person who experiences it. Very often when it comes to financial abuse, you're going to hear about the misuse of a power of attorney, which is quite common, unfortunately, these days. And one thing that I always want to stress when I talk about any form of abuse is that it's rarely a case of, a stranger jumping out of the bushes, or very often people assume it only takes place in long-term care. It's not the case. It happens everywhere. It's very prevalent in our communities, but very hush-hush. But regardless of which type of abuse we're talking about, in 81% of the reports that are made, again, when we're talking about abuse against older people, the harm has happened at the hand of somebody they knew. So it's either a family member, a spouse, a friend, or a neighbor. So that's why I find it so important to talk about it all the time, because it's not something we can chalk up to something that happens out there outside of our control or outside of our realm. Now, frauds and scams, the slight difference is that usually these are perpetrated by strangers, and they tend to target anyone. That can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. Some of them specifically target older people, but in terms of falling prey to them, even Zoomers, even young kids who are so-called digital natives, who were born with a phone in their hands, will fall prey to them as well. So it's not a matter of age. It's very sophisticated systems that are designed to make you fall for them. And just like abuse, it is also, frauds and scams are also very rarely reported. And some of that is due to the shame and the embarrassment that people feel about having fallen for a scam. So the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, which, as the name indicates, focuses on this, says that they less than 5% of fraud is reported to them every year. And they say the number is closer to 1% than it is to 5%. And yet, what we know of the ones that are reported is that in 2021, $379 million were lost to scams and frauds. So that 379 million represents potentially like 2% of the frauds that we know about. So imagine how much money just goes poof in the air every year due to frauds and scams. So it's not rare. And it's not, as much as we all think that we know better and that we would never fall for it, clearly we do. So it's important to talk about it. And of course, in the past couple of years, the rates of scams and the types of scams have changed and grown. And so there's been a 130% increase in the past between 2020 and 2021. So let's just say that the pandemic was a perfect timing for people who want to take advantage of others. So scams happen in a variety of places. They happen on the phone, they happen online, they can happen at home or in your community. So today I'm not going to talk too much about home or community. That's kind of a different topic, sort of. I can give you a couple of examples. So when we're talking about a home scam, this would be like a bogus contractor that comes to your door and makes you sign a contract to like redo your roof and then never shows up and doesn't give you back your money or something. In the community, it looks like a friend of a friend who suddenly wants to talk to you and convince you to invest in something or buy real estate with them or something like this. But today we're going to talk about more the online factor, because it represents 56% of all reported scams. And by online, it's email, text, internet-based, social media. So it covers a pretty wide range of activities. Of course, the scams via direct calls still represent a good solid 42% of all the scams we know about, so they're not to be forgotten. So you can see on my screen there are 7 kinds, and I could have taken more time to even break it down some more, but I know we're limited in time. And we're going to go through them one by one to kind of talk about what they look like and how they manifest. So we'll start with the romance scams, because they are currently one of the most prevalent forms of scams. So as you can see in the image on the right, $43 million lost in 2021 to romance scams. So one of the reasons for this is that there's a growing number of people going online and older people going online to look for friendship, companionship, a new boyfriend, girlfriend. So usually it will manifest itself where you're going to meet a person in an online community or on a dating site, and that could be even on a completely legitimate dating site. That person usually has a very nice profile picture, they have a good job, usually they live abroad or they live far enough from you that it's not easy or convenient for you to see each other face to face. So it's an online only based relationship. They claim romantic interest or strong feelings for you immediately. That's what we call love bombing. So they're going to shower you with praise and tell you how wonderful you are and how they want to make a life with you. They've never met anyone like you. And, as a matter of fact, they're going to come and visit you so you can seal the deal and, be together for real. And then a crisis happens. So usually, it ranges in the scale of dramatic things. It could be like, I lost my luggage and my credit card stopped working and now I'm stuck in limbo in whatever airport, or sometimes it's more dramatic and it has to do with a medical issue. But the point is, they need money, just a loan, and they're going to ask you to help them make a transfer of funds to them into Canada or abroad. And if that is not enough of a red flag, they're also going to usually insist that you either keep your relationship with them or your loan, the loan you're making, secret. So really what's happening is that in reality, no one but you has ever met, since you haven't really met them in person. No one knows this person. No one knows of them. They might not even know you're engaging with somebody online, and they like it that way. And so, they might ask you for money several times in a row. Sometimes they even send you back money a little bit to sort of look like they're making an effort to repay you, but then they ask you for more. And then eventually when you're all tapped out, they disappear. And in romantic modern language, they ghost you. So you end up with, having lost a lot of money and usually brokenhearted on top of the rest. Another one that you may have heard of, because it's made the rounds in the news recently, was the grandparent scam. So that one specifically targets people who are older. Usually if they do it by phone, it's going to be in the late evening or in the very early morning, but it can happen by email, by text, or by phone. And in that one, somebody will pose as a relative. So usually a child or a grandchild. And the way they do it is that, they try their luck. If you don't have grandchildren and they say, hi, grandpa, well, they're a bit out of luck. But very often, statistically speaking, there's a chance that something might work. And they will leave things vague enough to let you fill in the blanks. So it would start by, hi, grandpa. And if you respond with, Alex, is that you? There you go. They have the name, Alex. And then they continue to lead you on some more until they've gathered enough to kind of spin something out of it. And again, the scenario is similar to the romance scam that they're calling because they're in trouble. So they're in trouble with the law, or they had an accident, or they're in prison, they're stuck abroad. And again, they're going to ask you for your help for transferring money. So that can be standard, Western Union type transfer. It can be through Bitcoin, so cryptocurrency, which is obscure at best for many of us and really hard to track, or gift cards. And they'll give you instruction as to how to do it. And then they'll also ask you not to tell anyone. Don't tell dad, he'll be so mad at me. It's just between us. Thank you, grandpa. There you go. So you're bound by silence because you think you're helping your grandson or your granddaughter get out of a pickle. You're not. And again, they'll come back for it. It's not a one-time thing. They might call back, and this time somebody is going to pretend that they are the police officer in Haiti, where your granddaughter is being held or something, or a lawyer, and you're going to speak to different people who each increasingly get you worried and ask you for more money. And again, when it gets to the point where you cannot anymore, you've run out of your money and you say so, they disappear. The problem, and I'll say this right now, it applies across the board with these things, is that once you fall for it once, you make it on a list, and then they'll hit you up again. It will be a different scam, a different scammer, but you will be hit up again. So it's kind of a cycle that is really hard to get out of once you've fallen for it once. Now, the phishing and smishing, they're really funny names for something not that funny. That's probably what we're most familiar with because it's been around for a longer time. It's designed to trick you into disclosing personal or financial information. So when we say phishing with PH, it's by email. When we say smishing, it's by text because it stands for the start of SMS. It's a silly name, but whatever. So usually that's in the form of spam, e-advertising, something where they instruct you to click on a link to update your account information, unlock your account, accept a refund, redeem a prize, lots of prizes. And sometimes they're going to, pretend to be a trusted company like Fido or a bank so that it sounds more legit. And the goal is to capture your personal information for the purpose of identity fraud. Sometimes clicking on a link might also install malware on your computer, which means it gives people remote access to your computer, which means they can do whatever they want with it. So a big example, because it is the one that has been really popular recently, is the pretending to be either from the CRA or from, ironically, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center. So again, you'll be receiving an email or text or even a social media message of all things, informing you that you have a pending refund for CRA. And you click a link and you're asked to provide your passport number or your social insurance number, things that the CRA would never ask you, not in that way. If you've resorted to CRA services for anything, the communications with them can be a bit complicated. But usually if you do things online with CRA, you will have to go log in to your safe, protected CRA web platform to do things. They don't ask you by text. But, very often it sounds legitimate. It looks legitimate because there might be the CRA logo. And sometimes you don't even really get to think about it too hard because what you get instead of a promise of a refund is a threat. It's a serious call about how you're going to go to jail or you're going to be deported and they're going to come to your door and get you. And while it sounds ridiculous as I say it, when you hear it, it's so easy to panic. As I mentioned at the start of the presentation, I'm French. I'm in good standing with immigration. I've always been. But the first time I heard a message threatening me with deportation from the CRA, it took me a couple of seconds to stop panicking. It is designed for that purpose. We all have our weaknesses. Some of us have a certain apprehension towards law and order. Others are worried about their legal status in the country. There's always something that can get you. So do know this, just like the CRA will never ask you for your SIN number by text, they will also never threaten you with deportation. Sorry, I lost my page. So since we're on the topic of pretending to be things, that's the phenomenon known as spoofing. So impersonating an authority or a financial agency. And that manifests by being able to hide where they're calling you from. So they, we're talking about very elaborate fraud systems, not just one person calling as a prank. They're very, very organized criminal entities. So they have all the technology available to, alter their information in emails and text messages to make it look like it's coming from the government, to fake caller ID numbers when it displays on your phone. There are a couple of telltale signs. So first, it's not uncommon that there will be very poor punctuation and very bad grammar and spelling. That's always a red flag. Not to be a snob, but it's the truth. Also, if you take your mouse and you go hover over where the email address is, which might be something like collection@cra.ca, if you hover over it, it will actually reveal the true name of the sender's real email address. So if there's a discrepancy there between what you see in one line and what you see when you hover over it, clearly they're hiding their true identity, and it is definitely fake. And it's important to, of course, protect your email for the simple reason that once they're in, they can blanket your contact list with all sorts of false claims and false ads and pretending to be you, asking for money or asking for gift cards. Again, I've seen it happen. I received an email supposedly from my board chair that was asking me to send her money in iTunes card. Nobody's safe. And I've added something that I only heard about recently, which sounds very far-fetched, but I'll mention it anyway. There's been a new rash of impersonators of famous people. So it can be a beloved country singer or an actor. And, they will engage, and some of them are of a romantic nature, which of course is everybody's dream. Some of them will be about, wanting to thank their fan and making available some VIP tickets that just need to click on the link, but then they will be asking you for your credit card, but don't worry, you won't be charged. And there you go, you're hooked. And again, I know these sound really far-fetched, and you're tempted to maybe roll your eyes, because who would honestly believe that Brad Pitt wants to hang out with you? But they are preying on the isolation that many people felt in the last couple of years. And I think we all kind of struggled in our own ways. Some of us lost sight of some things, and anything will do rather than being alone. And it can have a really, really, really bad real impact. So through my work, I often talk with people who work in the shelter space. So there's only 13 shelters in Canada that are specifically open for older people. And one of them in Alberta was telling me that she had a woman in her shelter right now who had lost her home to one of those famous people impersonators. And it was just dawning on her now that she was sheltered that this was all made up, and she had lost her money and she had lost her house to it. And she was crushed by an uncontrollable amount of shame and anger towards herself. So again, these things, it's easy to dismiss them sometimes, but they should be taken seriously. And I think, never underestimate that just having a bad day one day, you let your guard down and maybe you fall for something that you would not have fallen for otherwise. Sorry, it's a very sad topic sometimes. Identity theft, I believe you're all familiar with the concept. So it can happen online, over the phone, sometimes without even engaging with you. And people will use your information that they've collected illegally to either apply for a loan or apply for government benefits. And sometimes they'll create a fake online persona or fake account with stolen photos and information that they harvested online from legitimate people. So they look like a real human being, and they just push more scams and fake ads and anything else, misinformation of every kind, usually with a purpose to gain more information and more money out of people. And another one that I, as I was typing my presentation, I thought, I hate having to say those things sometimes, because it's such an example of, situations where everybody's vulnerable, and yet here we are making it worse. So COVID and medical scams have been a thing. There's always been some, snake oil peddlers, but of course the pandemic really unleashed a whole new boatload of them. And, of course, it was more noticeable in the early days of the pandemic, when I think many of us had less information available and were very scared. Now things have changed, but, the processes evolve, or rather the processes remain the same. The details evolve. So they're still out there, and, pay mind to that. So they happen by email, by text, sometimes door to door, but not as often. And they will offer things like rapid testing, some kind of miracle cure, some kind of way to skip the wait line for a new vaccine, but you have to pay a fee. Or they're going to, at the time in the early days, they offered to, help people fill their applications for like something like the CERB. And they really just did whatever they wanted. And they preyed on two things: the fear of the virus and the isolation that came with that, as we all were staying home and not able to socialize with each other as much as we used to. Some people who, used to go to a community center for activities and go see their children once a week and go to church, or suddenly couldn't, and they were alone and they were afraid. And it's so much easier to get in when somebody is alone and afraid. So in the first 6 months of the pandemic in 2020, there was over 5,000 reports of COVID fraud and over $6 million lost to it. So not insignificant. So we've talked about the types of frauds. And if you strip away the details, whether it's the lover or the granddaughter or whatever, you're left with kind of the same key tactics. They're all built on the same, they hinge on the same principles. So one thing you will notice always, there's a sense of urgency. They create an environment for you to feel pressure or to feel threatened, so that you don't have time to think. Because if we had time to think, if you had a moment to collect your thoughts for a second, immediately you would start poking holes and be like, that makes no sense. This is not real. But when you are in a moment of panic that has been created by the person in front of you, or on the phone with you, or by email, panic because you think if you don't do something, something bad's going to happen. So there's medical urgency potentially, or there's a threat from a CRA officer, or maybe it's just a time-sensitive offer and you should get in while you can because it's ending in 1 hour. This is when we lose sight of reality. And this is how you make bad decisions. Second thing to know is the kind of like the other side of the coin to if you don't do something, something bad will happen. There's the something really good could happen if you do this. So they prey on your optimism. So whether it is a long lost aunt and the sudden inheritance that you might get, or any windfall that is promised, there's that sense that it's just within reach if you just first give money, which again, do not pay money to get money. This is not how it works. And very often they'll pretend to be a lawyer, a banker, somebody that you can trust, kind of playing on that optimistic, oh my God, maybe today is my lucky day. So when you boil it down some more, that's both of these things. That's just emotional manipulation. They are experts at it. So whether we're talking about bullying and scaring, or befriending and pretending to love someone, or simply exploiting our politeness, You know what I mean, right? That sense that we don't want to make a fuss. We don't want to raise too many objections. We feel uncomfortable saying no. We've been told to be polite. They will exploit that. So that brings us to some of the key safety tips on the personal and emotional level. First, be skeptical. It's okay to question things. It's a good, healthy thing to question things. So if it sounds too good to be true, usually it's because it is. The saying is right for a good reason. If something sounds out of the ordinary, or if you even get an inkling that something is not right, trust your gut, follow your instinct. And the best way to do that is to stop the interaction. So hang up or close the computer, whatever it is, put down your phone and go double check elsewhere. So if your bank called you with some kind of weird random statement thing, go check with your bank, but like go there physically or grab the number of your bank off a phone book. Do not use any contact information or link that is provided in the email that you received. Go check elsewhere. Or if your granddaughter is supposedly stuck in Haiti, call your kids and ask them, hey, is Sophie really in Haiti? You'll know immediately. Always double check. And nothing bad's going to happen if you do that. There's no risk there. 2, always protect your personal information. So that means, as I said, beware of unknown senders, unknown emails. Do not respond to them. Do not even respond to say, I'm not interested. Just let it drop, delete it. Do not open email attachments that you don't know. Do not click on any unknown links. Be cautious about what you download on your computer or your tablet. And also be mindful of what you share on social media and who you share it with. Social media can be a wonderful tool for staying in touch. It's become part of many people's lives. But that doesn't mean, and yes, on the grand scheme of things, they technically own all of our data already. But on your own personal level, be mindful of what you put out there. So, like the games that we play, like which Disney character are you? And then you share the results with your friends. All these things, some of them are actually designed as a way to kind of harpoon personal information out of you. Don't share too many details with who you are with, what they are named, what their birth date is, where there are, photos of them. And if you do, then make sure that your privacy settings are set in such a way that only people that you actively befriended because you know them can see them, not open to everyone and for everyone to see. There are courses out there. There's free, tech literacy and social media courses out there. If you're interested to learn more, or if you have somebody in your family that can help you with this, I strongly recommend doing a bit of an audit of, where you're at, what are your settings, is everything tight and safe. The third point, and that will be maybe the most important thing that I hope, you get out of today, is it's okay to be rude. And I put rude in between quotes because I don't think it's rude to say no. Saying no is a lot easier than it seems. It's terrifying at first, and then you do it, and then it's really easy. Saying no it's an act of self-respect. It's an act of self-preservation. And it helps you protect yourself and protect other people. And best of all, it is a full sentence. You do not need to say any more than no. Hang up the phone, delete that email. You don't need to justify anything to anyone, and you do not have to worry about hurting their feelings because they do so many calls a day and so many emails a day. But it's for you. It's okay to put up a fuss, so to speak. And the fourth tip is act fast when you want to report. So if you think something has happened, move fast to let your financial institution know so that they can put a hold on things and protect your finances. And also act fast in reporting to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, because that helps them flag that fraud for others. They are able to track, what is happening where, and to let people know through law enforcement, through media, when they are made aware of it. So calling them, it might not guarantee that you're going to get restitution if you lost some money. That's a different bag of tricks. but at the very least, you get that sense of agency back a little bit by letting them know the details so they can prevent other people from falling prey to it. Tech tips. I'm sure most of you, I mean, you're all connecting on Zoom today, many of you on tablets. You're probably up to speed on that, but I'll say it anyway. Get a good antivirus, make sure you're always up to date with that. Never share your personal information or logins. As I said before, limit the amount of information you share on social media. It's always recommended not to use public computers or Wi-Fi hotspots, or at least not for anything that requires logging in or personal information. Create strong and unique passwords. You can use a password manager to help you with that. Never use the same password for all your things. And if you have been hacked or scammed, make sure you change everything right away. It's a pain, but it's important to do. And if you can set up a two-factor authentication process, even better, that limits the risk of somebody else doing it or getting it. So what to do if you've been scammed? I realize time is going by and I'm speaking a lot and I want to make room for questions. So I'll go through this a little faster, but again, you should have access to the slides. First of all, do not panic, collect your thoughts, take your time, and then stop all communications with the fraudster and start gathering data. So that means any correspondence you had with them, where you met them, where the fraud took place, whether it on a website or a social media account, your financial statements, anything where you can see there's maybe been some withdrawals or unusual activities. All of these things, what contact information a scammer used to contact you, whether by phone or email. Have it all ready and kind of build a bit of a timeline of what you remember so that it's easier for you to kind of tackle the topic and be very systematic and saying, right, this happened and then that happened and this is the information you need for me to report to you. You're going to want to notify a bunch of people, obviously, your bank and your financial institutions. If it took place on a website, let's say Facebook, or on an app like, I don't know, Bumble for dating, report that to them as well. Let them know this took place on their platform. If you think your mail has been redirected, notify Canada Post. And I will add this, and I put it in big font. Tell your friends and family about it. Because of the people involved in this situation, the only ones who should be ashamed are the people who are committing the crime. You, if you have been victimized and if they got your money from you, you have nothing to be ashamed of. For a lot of people, this is the hardest part because they're afraid to look like they are not, quote unquote, with it. They're afraid that people are going to start thinking they're not capable to manage their own affairs anymore. And so they sit with this, they sit with those bad feelings, and it ends up ruining their health on top of ruining their finances. So it might be difficult to say at first, and maybe you don't want to start with your children, maybe you want to tell a friend first, but tell somebody, because they can also help you do the reporting, which always feels a bit overwhelming. So again, advice with your financial institution, they should know these things themselves and be able to walk you through it, but check for unauthorized debits, monitor the accounts, place some flags on the accounts, change your PIN numbers, get new cards, go through, renew the whole thing, clean slate. If you decide to report to law enforcement, it's important to let them know so that they know it's happening in the community or in the area. Make a report, ask for a copy of the police report, keep a log of all the calls, document your actions. So again, it's easier for you every time to follow the whole process. And as I said before, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre will benefit from you reporting. They do not guarantee a return of the funds all the time, particularly if cryptocurrency was involved. It is incredibly hard to track, but it is worth reporting anyway. If not for you, then for other people. And I added this as well because it can be a useful tool. You can check your credit report in two places. There's Equifax and TransUnion. You can request a copy of your credit report to see if anybody has opened an account or incurred debt in your name. You can ask to put an alert on your credit report. And it's always a good thing to do. It's good practice. Excuse me. And then I guess that's what I mentioned earlier and kind of throughout. In the wake of a fraud, it's not rare for people to experience a lot of mixed feelings. There's embarrassment, there's shame, there's resentment, there's anxiety, they will lose sleep, they will lose the appetite. And for some people, it slides straight into actual really heavy depression and sometimes suicidal thoughts. So it's not just money. It's not just a weird story. It really impacts people's mental health and their well-being. So whether somebody comes forward to you and tells you something, or whether you think something is happening, you have a hunch, but you're not sure, be very empathetic when you talk with this person. Do not judge them. Again, take a beat. Whatever comes out of your mouth on first instinct in a moment of strong feelings is rarely the right thing. Take a breath. Do not say something like, how could you be so stupid? Just feel for them, feel with them, and then present them with options and ask them what they want to do. When you've been stripped of your agency and you've been left feeling like a victim, being offered the option to take control again is the first good step, or a step in the right direction. So you can say, what would you like to do? If you want, I can drive you to the police station, or we can look at your bank account together and we can try to sort it out, or, offer ways, or ask them simply, do you want me to go find more information about this? I can figure out, who we need to talk to, and then I'll bring this back to you and we can decide what to do. Like, that's really useful for somebody who's probably feeling at a loss right now. So yeah, offer your help, offer your support, and then ask them if they want to share, ask them if they want to tell other people. And it could be a social gathering of sorts, maybe like the one you're in today, and, making the conscious decision to make a little community announcement so that other people can be spared the same trouble. That's my advice. It's not that easy. Sometimes it will take several conversations. Sometimes it might be a bit of a barbed discussion. Give it time. Do not push anyone in a direction. Just let them know that you're here to help. If you're curious, there's 3 resources on the screen right now. There are many more out there, but I find these are useful. The Little Black Book of Scams is put out by the Competition Bureau of Canada. They update it regularly, and it's, recent scams, how to spot them. Be a Savvy Senior was developed by an organization that's also here in Vancouver called the Canadian Centre for Elder Law. And they have short videos and downloadable tools that kind of present different scenarios and different strategies. And Protecting Each Other from Scams is a short brochure in English and in French, and it was developed by one of our kind of provincial partners networks called Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario. So if you have the slides at home and you are looking at them, every name for every organization is hyperlinked, and it will take you directly to the document. And that's it. Sorry, I talked a lot. We still have 10 minutes for questions. I'll stay longer if needed. You can find me at the phone number and email on the screen. I invite you to go check out our website. You can become a member if you want. It's free. You get a monthly newsletter about our activities. And if you want to learn more as well, we put out a national strategy on elder abuse prevention this year. We're basically just decided to pull together the knowledge of a bunch of partners and provincial networks and advocates, senior advocates, and build something that is kind of a plan, of a roadmap on how to improve prevention of elder abuse. It's called Future Us. And if you want to go check it out, the link is right here at the bottom of the screen.